Welcome to the Anti-Optimist Therapist podcast, where optimism and realism coexist. I'm April O'Neill, a therapist and relentless question asker about what it actually means to live well. Here we don't do toxic positivity or one-size-fits-all advice. We look at the real human condition, the suffering, the striving, and the quiet resilience it takes to build a meaningful life. In every episode, I'll share stories, insights, and lessons drawn from acceptance and commitment therapy, psychology, philosophy, in my own life, because meaning isn't found in chasing perfection. It's found in learning how to carry hard things, how to let go of control, how to live by your values, even when life doesn't always cooperate. If you're tired of shallow advice and you're looking for something more honest, more human, and more useful, then you're in the right place. Today's theme is about how you can't change your past, but you can change what it means. In the book, A Liberated Mind, Stephen Hayes writes, "The story you carry isn't the only one available." In Act Questions and Answers, Russ Harris writes about how you want to, as a therapist, help your clients create alternative stories that reflect their values, not just their pain. And that's what we're talking about today. ACT doesn't just ask you to forget what happened. It asks you to stop letting it narrate your every decision. Not by force, not by pretending it didn't matter, because it does, but by loosening your grip on the version of the story that's been holding you hostage. The good news is there's always another draft, always another way to frame what happened, one that honors the truth and your future. And it's interesting to realize we all have stories we don't even realize we're telling. Stories we didn't even know that we were rehearsing. Maybe it's, I always ruin things, or I should have known better, or I'm not the kind of person who gets it right, or I don't deserve anything good. They don't arrive like stories in our brains, though. They arrive like facts, but they're not facts. They're habits of meaning making, and they can be rewritten. That's what ACT calls diffusion, the process of stepping back from one of these stories and realizing you're not obligated to believe everything it says, and you can emphasize a different meaning. One great example I think of this is Anthony Ray Hinton. He spent 30 years on death row for 2 murders that he didn't commit. Unfortunately, because of that, he lost everything, his freedom, his youth, his mother, and yet he says, "I forgave the people who put me there." Not because they earned it, but because he didn't want the rest of his life to be defined by hate. He could have told a story of permanent victimhood, and I don't think anybody would have blamed him had he. But he told a story of strength, faith, and choice. And that story didn't just free him, it freed others too. Another example I love is author Lauren Hillenbrand. She rewrote her story without ever leaving her house. She's the author of Unbroken and Seabiscuit, 2 deeply human stories about pain, persistence, and triumph. And she wrote almost all of it while battling a chronic illness that was so debilitating that some days she couldn't sit upright. Her world was often reduced to 4 walls and a mattress. But she didn't wait for perfect conditions to create something meaningful. She wrote anyway. From bed, from brain fog, from fatigue. Because even if she couldn't change the limits of her body, she could still shape the story she told with her life. This makes me think of many clients I've worked with at different times who have called themselves monsters, who have done things that they regretted, things that hurt people, maybe even a lot of people, things that made them wonder if they even deserved to try again. Those stories were very common, especially when I worked in prison. You'd hear things along the lines of, I don't think I'm worth forgiving. But the interesting thing is, redemption isn't a feeling, it's a direction. And little by little, as I explored values with these people and worked on other things, and as they started taking actions aligned with the kind of person that they wanted to be, the story would often begin to shift. Not in a performative way, not in a look at me now sort of way, but in a quiet, steady, lived sort of way. Many times these people were able to come to understand that they could not undo the past, but the best thing that they could do for the past, for themselves, for those they hurt, was to live a better life going forward. And that, I think, is the difference between shame that paralyzes and responsibility that heals. There have been plenty of times in my own life that I couldn't make sense of anything. Not what happened, not how people responded, not hollow feelings that followed. And sometimes, for a while, I would think maybe that was it. Maybe that's who I was now. Until I started noticing what else was true. That I could still love people well, that I could still create something meaningful, that I could still hold things like grief in one hand and the metaphorical pen in the other. I couldn't and I can't go back. None of us can. But at the same time, I don't have to stay stuck in a chapter I never asked for or intended to have. And in my opinion, this is what ACT gets right that most therapy doesn't. You're not here to delete your past. You're here to figure out, how can I hold it differently? To say, this happened, it matters, and I still get to choose what kind of person I want to be now. ACT doesn't ask you to disown your pain. It just reminds you that pain is a chapter, not a character, not you. You're still the author. So I want you to try this. Ask yourself, what story have I been telling myself over and over? Is it working for me, or is it just hurting me? What values are quietly asking to be heard beneath the pain that I feel? What would it look like to let the pain be part of the story, but not the narrator? You don't have to rewrite everything overnight. You just have to start by noticing which stories need to be rewritten at all. And final thoughts. There are things in life, I think probably everybody's life, that should have never happened. Pages you didn't choose to write, but if you're still here, still breathing, still trying, then the story isn't over. You are not the worst thing that you've ever done or the worst thing that's ever happened to you. You are not the thing that someone else did to you. You are not the mistakes you made. You are the person who lived through it, the one who gets to decide what comes next. You can carry the truth without letting it carry you. You can hold the pain without handing it the pen, because even if you didn't choose this chapter, you still get to choose how the next one is written. And that might be the most powerful story you ever tell. Thanks for listening to the Anti-Optimist Therapist podcast, where optimism and realism coexist. If today's episode spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it, or leave a review so more people can find their way here. And if you want to go deeper, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Substack, and my website, theantioptimisttherapist.com. And just remember, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep moving in the direction of what matters. I'll see you next time.